All right, well, welcome everybody to our session 5 of our training series. It's Understanding Diverse Audiences. My name is Ligia Andrade Zúñiga. I'm going to be moderating the session today. I am the co-chair of the leadership committee with the Central Committee in San Mateo County. And I also am the co-chair for the Latinx Dems club in San Mateo County. And I also serve on the Stonewall Dems Club with Chris. There's a lot of other things I do in the community. I am the board president of the San Mateo Union High School District Board of Trustees. And I do a lot of work around disability justice, like the California State Council and things. So again, welcome everyone. This is going to be a great panel. I will go into now sharing who our panelists are today. I wanted to start with this quote. It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences, by Audre Lorde. We acknowledging all of the intersections that we have are really important because we are all, we're all different, but achieving the same goal. So it's important that we always acknowledge folks for who they are and their identities and make sure that everybody's included. I have a disability, and so that's another group of folks that are usually kind of the last to be thought of. So getting to those communities is important. So we will talk about all of this today. Our first panelist is Miss Alexis Lewis. Alexis, if you'd like to introduce yourself and maybe touch on some of the points here on your bio and tell us a little bit more about you.
Thank you. Well, as my bio has first that I'm a wife, mother, and grandmother, those are my most important roles. But I'm also proud of my participation in the Democratic Party. Locally, I'm an elected member of the Central Committee, which is the committee that endorses and supports Democratic candidates. We also raise money for the party. I'm currently on the executive board as our corresponding secretary. I'm involved with the NAACP. I'm their former first vice president, but I still try to remain active in the roles and the things that the NAACP that they do within the community. I'm a member of the Foster City Association of Black Residents. We do a couple of things a year. Our biggest is the Juneteenth celebration, which is coming up in just a couple of weeks. I think it's important that we all support candidates and help them with fundraising or endorsing them, and the ones that want to promote diversity and inclusion and equity, and those things are very important to me. And last but not least, I'm an executive assistant at a biotech company, which I'm really proud of my company because we do studies in oncology to help cancer patients live a better life. And I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you mind also putting your contact info where people can get in touch with you in the chat?
Okay.
That way we have it for later. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, but thank you very much. All right, we'll go on to our next panelist. Miss Rebeca Armendariz in Gilroy. Go ahead.
Hi, folks. Good morning and happy Pride. My name is Rebeca Armendariz. My pronouns are she, her. And also a proud mom. My kids are 25, 19, and 18. So they're adults technically, but they're still my kids. And also a dog mom. Let's see. I am a city council member of the city of Gilroy. This is my 4th year of my first term. And I just decided to re-up, so I'll be launching my campaign soon. And my day job is as a director of movement building at Working Partnerships USA, where I get to work on policy and work hand in hand with labor, electeds, and community, really to help bring to the surface and highlight issues impacting our workers and working families. So I'm really proud of that work and really, you know, grateful that I get to do that as part of my day job. I'm from Gilroy, born and raised. My kids are 5th generation Gilroyans. And so my roots run pretty deep there. And I swore I would never run for office, right, growing up, but destiny took me there. And it's hard work, but well worth it. And let's see, I get to also be on the Democratic Party. I've been an ADEM delegate since 08. I'm on the executive board of our local central committee. A founding board member of Caras, which is a advocacy nonprofit here in Gilroy. And then I get to serve on the board of Siren, which is an Immigrants' Right Network, Pit Stop Outreach, which does direct outreach and service to the unhoused, and then the Human Agenda, which does a little bit of everything. So thank you for inviting me. I'm really proud to be here with you.
Thank you. Wow. Thank you very much. Our next panelist is Mr. Chris Sturken.
Thanks, Ligia. Good morning, everybody. Chris Sturken, pronouns he, him, and his. I am on the Redwood City Council representing District 2. That's downtown and surrounding neighborhoods, mostly east of El Camino. And I grew up in Belmont, been in Redwood City since about 2018, but, you know, I always had family there growing up. Went to SF States and graduated with a degree in environmental studies. And I've been in kind of conservation and housing spaces for my entire career, working for organizations like Green Foothills, like Housing Endowment Regional Trust of San Mateo County, Human Investment Project Housing, and then currently at Sacred Heart Community Service in San Jose, which is a secular anti-poverty nonprofit that works to eradicate poverty through providing essential services, self-sufficiency, and through organizing. So I do fundraising and volunteer recruitment and management, among a whole host of other things, as y'all who are in the nonprofit sector know, I do. And I got elected in 2022, been on the council for about 1.5 years. I wasn't planning on running, but the former mayor who supported me, Giselle Hale, decided not to run and encouraged me, among other folks, to run, and I did, and I won by 50 votes. So it was a razor-thin margin, and I'm just so grateful for this opportunity. I ran because I believe that everybody deserves a safe and affordable place to call home, and wanted to keep our downtown safe and vibrant. And I really got politicized in 2016 as a volunteer with the Faith in Action's campaign for rent control in San Mateo. That was what jump-started me in local politics. And I've served on a variety of kind of boards and commissions since then, currently as co-chair of the LGBTQIA+ Commission for the County of San Mateo, but also on the Transportation Advisory Committee for Redwood City, Planning Commission, and then Council. And I've been an alternate for Andrade with the San Mateo County Democratic Party Central Committee up until her term ended this past, few months ago. But still engaged and involved, co-founder of the Stonewall Democratic Club with Ligia, and just really grateful to be here. Thank you all so much for having me.
Thank you, and I'm super grateful for all of you. Thank you for participating and sharing your expertise with our community. All right, so we'll go into some questions I have for all of you. And it would be nice also if, if we could interact as well. All the panelists can, if you have follow-up questions with each other, go ahead and ask as well. So the first question is, what does reaching diverse audiences mean to you? We would start with Ms. Lewis. Go ahead, Alexis.
Well, you're muted, Alexis.
Sorry, I lost the screen for a while. I've taken this time off from work, so I am getting work emails that have come in and interfere with my screen, so I apologize for that. I think being able to reach diverse audiences is being sure that you're inclusive. I think participating in different communities' celebrations that they have is really important. Recognizing the leaders in those communities and communicating with them. And I think reaching out and participating in like their community activities, but not to the point of pandering, to do it as a learning experience for yourself, to see how what you can learn from that. And maybe you can also add something to their cultures that or make comments that are not offensive and ask questions that are not offensive, but just do it as a learning experience for you and those people participating in the event.
Great, thank you. Yeah, how about you, Chris?
Yeah, so the communities that I immediately think of that I represent include, the LGBTQI plus community, younger folks, and renters, as a renter myself. And one of the things that's important when you start your campaign is to make sure that your team and your volunteer base is diverse, right? But be careful not to fall into tokenism, right? Don't just hire or recruit one volunteer who's a person of color or an LGBTQI plus identified person and not give them any power or authority or say in your campaign. Lean on their lived experience, their learned experience to inform your campaign so you can reach diverse audiences and understand their needs, right? And make sure when you're undergoing your campaign to, leverage languages, right? If you speak another language, leverage that. Like I speak Spanish, not fluently, but I did use that on the campaign trail and it went a long way, right? And when you're translating pieces, your mail pieces or walk pieces, do your homework, do some of the work yourself, right? Like use appropriate translators, but then get a native speaker to review it, right? Don't just rely on Google Translate. That doesn't work. And leverage media. Something I did in my capacity as outreach specialist for HIP housing was to partner with, Phil-Am Radio in Daly City, for example, to outreach the Filipinx community in both Tagalog and English to promote their home sharing program, right? And then finally, as Alexis was saying, show up for the community, not just when it's expected, like during Pride Month or during other heritage months, but when it's not expected, right? Be in community with your neighborhood, with your district, with your city, and show them you care.
Thank you. That's super important. To not be performative, to be genuine in reaching out to folks, like that you're really interested, and it's not just for whatever they can give you. That's a very good point. How about you, Ms. Armendariz? What about you? What does reaching diverse audiences mean to you?
Thank you. And I do want to thank Chris and Alexis too. I think it is important not to pander, not to tokenize, right? But when you really consider folks your community, right, then you're not othering them. They're not any different than you, and you do show up in an authentic way, right? Because their issues are your issues, and you connect and you learn about them and you dive right in because they are your community. They're not some other entity that you don't represent. And in Gilroy, we're still at large. Unfortunately, we're at large elections. And so as much as I would like to stay in my East Side community, I had to branch out, and it was scary. But meaning, like, to me, diverse also meant renters, right? Economically diverse, not just ethnically diverse or culturally diverse, but it also meant economically diverse folks. So renters, the unhoused, reentry folks, folks who aren't our traditional voters, aren't the most likely to vote folks, but really reaching out and having a plan to keeping people engaged, to connecting them, right? Because we know all politics is local, you know, all politics is personal, but being the bridge to help people understand that and doing it, you know, just as often as you can when you're out there in the cuts with people, when you're not just on the doors knocking, but when you're out helping the community, you engage them and you learn their issues, and you're able to make those connections for them as to how policy at this local level, you know, up to the federal level, right up to DC, but how more so politics and policy at this local level impacts their daily lives. And you know, I was a candidate before right before COVID, and you know, my first few months as an elected were during the pandemic, so it was really tough, but it was also just put you in the throes of things, you know, and allowed me to be a public servant first and foremost, and reach a diverse community, but also, you know, a really different diversity of thought than we're used to when it came to, you know, policy and politics and stuff. And so it taught me to remember everybody, bring everybody to the table, you know, and so that's what diversity, I think, means to me.
Thank you. Yeah, that bridge building, it's so important to make people feel like they're included. Some folks don't think that, they don't see themselves in an elected position. And so having this representation is important because you're saying, no, you can also be here. With our young people, I think about my students in my school district, and I think about, what do they see? Like, do they see themselves in leadership in their cities, in their counties, school boards? What does that look like? And also on the campaigns, do they only see a certain community of people campaigning all the time? Are they included in that? Are they being asked what they think about things? It's really important to incorporate all of the voices, and voices that you wouldn't have thought that you know, you would be meeting with. And so that could be really uncomfortable if you're not familiar. So my next question is, how have you collaborated with communities you're not familiar with, and why is it important? I'll start with Ms. Armendariz.
Thank you, Ligia. So, you know, Gilroy is in South Santa Clara County, and I unfortunately tagged it the deep South of Santa Clara County, you know, because our leadership tends to lean conservative, although our demographics, our electorate isn't, right? It's largely Latino and it's largely Democratic or Democrat. And so we tend to have policies that are backwards, right? That are against what our voters, you know, have told us that they want. Prop 10, right? The legalization of cannabis, all kinds of stuff. And so we tend to go backwards in our policy, more towards Mayberry type stuff. And long story short, when we tried to erect a pride flag on June 1st, it got a lot of pushback. And you know, the LGBTQIA community in Gilroy is hidden. It's, you know, they remain in the shadows, and year after year, nobody was able to get the pride flag up, right? Nobody even would try to do it. And so we tried to do it my first year, and we were successful, but we brought in like the YWCA and the YMCA, and we brought in different student groups, and even the Republican Party like came to the table to like come out and support it. Yeah, it was really different. It was really strange, but some unlikely allies came to the table to support and to make sure that we got it done the first year. And so we did. And subsequently we passed a really obstructive, cumbersome policy to get any kind of flag raised at City Hall. but the same allies come together every 2 years, and we just actually did it again this morning. Every 2 years to pay the fee and to get the signatures and to get the flag, raised for the next 2 years. And so I'm pretty proud of that. It's helped people, especially young people, come out and speak up and be proud of who they are and feel safe and comfortable in their own community, at least on this day. And so that's a step forward.
That's great. And it was a collaboration with, different groups, right? That you didn't, you might not imagine. And so
Yeah,
that is
absolutely would never imagine. Yeah.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's excellent. And it's tough to do. But so like, why was that important to you? Why was it important to get the voices of all these different people that,
Yeah.
that you might not have?
So I'm a queer mom, I'm a trans mom, and I wanted my kids to feel safe, to feel like this, like I said, they're fifth generation Gilroy, and there is no way they should not feel uncomfortable or safe in their in this community, in this little piece of the world. And they did. And so that it wasn't okay with me. And so when somebody from the YMCA reached out and said, we have a youth group here, they would love to see this done, can you be part of the team to champion it? It was like, it came together at the right time, and it was the right thing to do. Yeah,
That's excellent. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
for sure.
How about you, Miss Lewis? How about you? How have you collaborated with communities you're not familiar with?
I believe being a part of the Democratic Central Committee has really kind of taught me how to collaborate with other communities, and communities that have not always been a part of the process. It's so important to involve them. And for me, being African American in San Mateo County, it's very important to me to bring in other African Americans to be a part of the process. Because if you even look at some of the city council positions in San Mateo County, we're not represented. I know we're a small group, but I think a lot of people have been in San Mateo County for a couple of generations, and that representation is important. But it's also important that women are represented, and that people from other communities, like the people with disabilities and people from the LGBTQ plus community. I believe everybody has a voice in what happens in your community. And whether you're involved in the Central Committee or run for city council or run for state assembly, you have to remember that all of us make the community, and all of us are a part of the community. And sometimes you have to pay attention more to the smaller communities that because they're important also. They're important to make decisions, like Rebecca was talking about how important local elections are. They're important because if you have a person that's on your school board or your city council that you don't feel represents you and has your best interests and supports equality and education and housing, you don't want that person to move on to the next level. You don't want them to end up being your representative in Congress if they take those same, I would say, I don't want to be mean or anything, but, ugly ideas with them to Washington. You want people that support equity at a local level, and you want that to be the next levels that go up. And I think collaborating, I know Rebecca talked about doing the pride flag. I think there was a lot of collaboration with recently with some of the resolutions that we did at the Democratic Party based on peace in Gaza. We did collaborations with resolutions on supporting labor unions. We've done a lot of collaborating, and we all have different feelings, and sometimes it gets a little heated, but in the end, we do what's best for our community. And back again to Rebecca with the flag, the first pride flag that was flown in Foster City was because of my church. We wrote the resolution for the flag, and I don't think it was raised last year, just because of the face of the city council has changed, and we don't have, my church, it doesn't have the advocates we used to have on the council. But I think that was a good example, because everybody in my church wasn't supportive of it, but we were able to come up with a plan, write a resolution, and move forward with it. The same has been with working with the Jewish community, speaking out against hate. We had a meeting at the Foster City Council, and I live in San Mateo, but I'm really involved in Foster City because that's where my church is, and I lived in Foster City for 20 years. But we got together and talked about what we could do addressing hate in the community, whether that hate is directed at people that are from the Jewish faith, the Christians, women, Blacks, Hispanics. We all feel the pain of hate, and we all have to stand up to hate. And I think that we did an excellent job of addressing that and talking about it. And I think it's something that has to be continued to be talked about. So it's so important to bring in people from all communities and as Chris has said, let everybody have a voice, let everybody listen to everybody's opinion, let them do more than just be a token for you on your campaign, but really bring them in and use their ideas to help move your campaign forward.
Thank you. And you said something really important. So you talked about the importance of the local elections and how some folks that get elected to the local positions move on, right, to Assembly, Senate, Congress, all of that, even the presidency. And so it is very important for us to understand what the values of those candidates are as they move forward. You're absolutely right. But when you were talking about your church raising the flag, and you said that last year you didn't have the representation on the council, that's a perfect example. So if you don't know, if you don't have allies on the councils, on the school boards, there might not be a cross-pollination of advocacy and of empowerment. And so that's really, really important. Thank you. With the students in my district, that's what we do as well. Like, we're doing some voter education and voter registration, and some of the students are 16 and 17, so they cannot vote, or they're undocumented, or they just can't vote for whatever reason. And it's still important to include them as well, because they advocate and they have friends and they have family, and they also need to know about who is representing them, because at one point in time they will be able to vote and they will remember. So if that person has moved on, they will be voters, whether they're for or against the measures, the propositions. I know that there are also some cities and some jurisdictions that are allowing folks that are undocumented to vote for, like, school board and things like that, which is another example of why we need to include everybody on the campaigns and on the councils, but also having folks go.
And also
sorry.
we represent folks who aren't voters and who won't ever be
Right.
voters too, right? We represent all of those voices and want to make sure that we positively impact their lives, right, in the community at large, and the most minority, right, and the most, and those in the majority, right, everybody across the spectrum. So yeah, I just wanted to know, not just voters, everybody in our community.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Like, there are people that can also help, and they also need to know about everything that's happening, because people need to be informed as well. And so, like, I don't remember who it was, that I think it was Chris, that don't just include people though on your campaign to campaign for you. Keep reaching out, keep having those conversations, keep that dialogue going throughout your tenure, because then it'll show that you weren't just there for them to help you, and then it'll be like a two-way street. So it's important. How about you, Chris? Like, why is this important, and how have you collaborated with communities you're not familiar with?
Yeah, kind of, going back to my campaign, I didn't live in my neighborhood for very long prior to running in it, right? It's called Centennial. It's just north of downtown. Like I said, I grew up in Belmont, but been hopping around. Had a really brief stint in Foster City during the time that flag raising, Alexis, the first one. And I remember that fight. And then was hopping around downtown Redwood City, because housing being challenging, right? Chasing after cheaper rents, breakups, you name it. Anyhow, so my neighborhood, Centennial, has historically not been directly represented in recent memory. And that's what I heard a lot on the campaign trail, was folks being tired of a small group of people from a specific neighborhood of the city called Mel Carmel, west of El Camino, being the powerhouse of the city, making decisions for everybody. And so what I did on my campaign was go to each neighborhood of my district and do basically a listening tour. This was before even, before campaign season even heated up. And I took notes. The rule is 80% listening, 20% talking, right? Asking questions specifically. And then I tailored my walk pieces for each of those neighborhoods based on the feedback I got from folks and their issues, what they care about. Yeah, and so when you do that, when you listen to folks, it gives you credibility. And even though I haven't been in the neighborhood very long, every time I talk to people, I'd be like, hey, I live around the corner. Hey, I live on Warren Street. I'm in your neighborhood. I am your neighbor. Like, let's talk. These are our shared issues now that I'm here. And make sure, in terms of reaching communities that you're not familiar with, like, you may not always be the best messenger, right? I'm not always the best messenger as a white male. And so I lean on my neighbors who are leaders within, trusted leaders and messengers within the communities of my district that I am not a part of, right? To help me connect with folks, to help me understand the issues. And finally, just make sure to be accessible. That goes a long way. Like, when I campaigned, I gave people my phone number, my cell phone. People could call me, they could text me, and some folks may not feel comfortable doing that. And there's reasons, there's safety issues with that too, right? So not everybody can afford to do that, right? But it has really gone a long way with my community, even with folks I don't agree with. They always say, hey, you're accessible. And that meant something to them, even though we disagree on a lot of things. And, when you do all of this outreach, whether it be through trusted messengers in your community or you yourself, or making yourself accessible, the result is that people feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel valued. And they'll remember that come election.
That is excellent. It's like that quote by Maya Angelou that people won't remember, what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. If you make them feel, that their voices are important, that they do matter, they'll remember you, and they'll then support you, even if you don't agree, it'll open the door for a constructive dialogue. And it won't be, something angry. So yeah, that's excellent. Excellent. Are there any other tips or anything else that you want to just give some advice about related to these two questions?
I would just add to what Chris said in terms of, and I think it was right on point, is to keep that that relationship going, right? There's an issue happening, every couple of weeks I like to walk my neighborhood, extended and survey folks, just informally check in with people who kind of like neighborhood captains and share, the chismosas, right? The folks in the neighborhood who like
the tea.
to collect the tea, right, from others. But it all relates back to issues that they're having. And so I like to share resources that the community is putting out. If there's a cleanup drive or, a new hotline from the city. I'd like to share that out and just hear what folks are saying. So I've just been doing that consistently, as you know, since I got elected. I could do better in terms of going to more diverse neighborhoods, you know, out of my side of town, but I try to hit different neighborhoods all the time, and some are more receptive than others, but they all, like Chris said, they all appreciate you being accessible, you hearing them, you know, you checking in on things, and it, you know, when you have your finger on the pulse of the community, you can really be up there on the dais representing them and know what you're talking about.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And showing people, even though you don't agree, right? You
Mhm.
just still can show them that
Yeah,
you're willing to meet halfway, or you're
yeah,
willing to hear what they have to say.
work on
That's
solutions together for
yeah,
sure. Yeah.
yeah, that's excellent. Um, are there any other little tidbits? Maybe some practical stuff that folks can do right now? I know you shared a lot. You all
I
are
think keep
awesome.
your data lists, right?
Yeah,
Keep your voter list, keep your data lists of your voters active so that you can flag leaders in your community. Remember to check back on them. You can take note of the issues happening in different neighborhoods where things are needed, what their important issues are, you know, just stay organized in that way.
yes, absolutely. Um, I wanted to give some advice about keeping your material and your social media and your websites accessible, making sure that the disabled community can also access
Mm,
your anything that's on your pages, translate things as best you can. Now, if you don't have anyone to really culturally have an interpretation, then don't do it. But you know, trying at least to find some folks that can help.
yeah.
Direct Google Translate doesn't always work, you know, so well, but at least making it, you know, making the up like the
Folks appreciate the effort. They
yeah,
really appreciate your effort. Like
yeah,
Chris said, right, when he was speaking, he's not really fluent, but
right.
just, you know, greeting people, you know, and acknowledging them, and yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And also just with like with your social media and stuff, with people with disabilities, if you have any images or anything that's a graphic, make sure you are using alt text to describe what that is. Because if somebody has a screen reader, they can go and then they can actually be part of whatever that picture is that you're showing. They're also going to be part of that audience if you do have a description. Um, and then also just like if you have an event and you can have some sign language interpretation or any sort of language interpretation, that goes a long way. Um, anything like that, and make sure that your events are accessible. I have a power chair, and you don't know how many times I'll arrive somewhere and it's not accessible. So then I
Mm,
can't participate, so I'm not going to support it.
right.
Because one, I can't see or can't hear whatever they're doing, so I don't feel included. But then second, it didn't include my community. We weren't even a thought. So all of that, and even with language interpretation, people that are, you know, sitting there, you want them to know what you're saying. And so people feel othered that way. Okay, so we can, if there's no other comments, we can move on to questions from the audience. Are there any questions? And I'm sorry, I can't see your hands, so
Yeah, Ligia, I can help with that. Is it okay if I stop your sharing so we can see people a
yes,
little
go right
better?
ahead.
There
Thank
we
you.
go. They can see you better. So if attendees want to raise their
Yeah.
Zoom hand up, you can call on them and we can bring them forward.
And there's some folks in the chat as well.
I think there was a question for Chris.
Yeah,
Yes.
go ahead,
Go
Ligia.
ahead. No, it's for you. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, across all the neighborhoods in my district, There was quite a variety, but then again, some things are the same, right? Like safety, you know, increasing kind of petty theft, things like that. Traffic, you know, so there's a lot of the usual things like affordability, traffic, but then also very hyper local issues that you wouldn't hear otherwise if you hadn't gone door to door. Like, you know, parking, the park safety was a big one in my part of Centennial because there's a park there and it's like drinking, things like that going on. But that is the benefit of you going door to door, especially in neighborhoods. And I want to highlight something that Rebecca mentioned, especially in neighborhoods where there may be less likely or unlikely voters, right? You got to make sure you have that balance when you're on your campaign of focusing strategically, of course, on the neighborhoods that have the high voter turnout because you do need their votes in order to win, but make sure you balance it with neighborhoods that are historically not engaged as they should be. Because again, it comes back to making sure people know that their voices matter and so that they engage in the process, period. Even if they don't vote for you, it's still important that they engage in the process.
Right. Absolutely. Go ahead, Karen.
My name's Karen Mackey and I'm San Mateo County Party Chair, and I just wanted to invite people who live in San Mateo County to an event we're having for San Mateo County candidates on Monday, June 3rd at 7 p.m. And I'll put a link to the details in chat, but we'll talk about what seats are, are contested, which aren't, how to get, how to file, how to get our endorsement. So I'll put a link in chat about it.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Karen. Jamal Khan, go ahead and answer your question.
Hello. So I know some of you mentioned, churches and other places of worship. I know when it comes to any kind of faith-based organization, they're all registered as 501c3 organizations. And so there can be issues with doing anything there that could be considered campaigning. Even something as simple as like passing out flyers could be an issue for them. So I guess, how did you guys navigate that?
So when churches or congregations have invited me, it's more for a meet and greet, right? It's not, they don't endorse, but they do let you come, or they've done panel discussions where all the candidates were invited just to do more of a discussion versus where they vote and endorse us, right? They can't endorse, they can't be involved in any partisan politics, but they can host, like I said, they can host meet and greets and they did allow us to pass out literature, I think, in the couple that I've been involved in. And I think that's fine as long as the organizational logo isn't on there, right? Their church logo isn't on there. It's just our campaign specific literature, and it was made clear at the beginning that they're not there to endorse, but just to meet us and to get to know us. So it was fairly easy. Yeah.
Yeah, those are excellent suggestions. Also, you can inform folks on how it affects them. It's not necessarily an endorsement or anything like that, but an advocacy, like explaining, look, this measure will do this and this and this, or this person is, supporting this and this and this. And it doesn't necessarily have to be go and support them. It's just information.
Yeah.
And then people vote on their own, right?
Yeah. And nonprofits can actually engage in policy or propositions, all that kind of stuff, but just not dealing with candidates or partisan politics.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Like you said, Ligia, if we inform them and let them know that they're not risking anything. Yeah.
Right. Right.
So Ligia, this is Bill James. I wanted, everybody's asking such polite questions. Does anybody have a horror story of just like getting it wrong at first initially? Like you go into a community and you think that showing up at the church is a good idea, or going to the, whatever it is, their event, and you just got it wrong because you didn't do the groundwork, you didn't approach it in the right kind of culturally appropriate way. And if it doesn't have to be a personal experience, but something you've observed, and how do you recover from that? How do you still be successful despite maybe not getting it right the first time?
Great question. Yeah. Does anyone have a story?
Not off the top of my head, but
Uh-huh. That one's
yeah,
hard.
I'm sure I've fumbled lots of times.
Uh-huh.
Well, maybe what would you suggest that a neophyte do, a new candidate, somebody who doesn't really have this experience of organizing in other communities? What's the first place they might start to make sure that they don't make such a mistake? Or how can they get information about how to approach the community, whether it's a church or events or
I think you always want to meet with leadership, at the grassroots and the grass tops levels. You always want to meet with folks. And if you're doing, what you're supposed to be doing in door-to-door work and, talking to residents and neighbors and, then you should know who those folks are. Once you get started hitting the doors, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions and reveal yourself as someone new, who isn't familiar, and your intentions are to learn and absorb and hopefully gain their support.
Absolutely.
And if I might add, just remember that rule of the 80-20 rule, right? So 20% you talking, asking questions primarily, and 80% listen. And active listening at that, right? So without any distractions, put your phone away. Make sure that they know all the cues, body language, that you're invested in what they have to say, and not thinking about what you're going to say or how you're going to respond while you're listening.
Absolutely. You know how many times there's this one particular person that is in elected office that we would go and talk to him, and he was like looking around or on his phone or cutting our meeting short, and that really turned us off, and we just didn't work with him anymore. So that makes a big difference. How about you, Alexis?
I think it's important, and back to the question about, I think Jamal had a question about religious organizations. The way that my church has met some of the candidates that run for office and are running for office is we have other events. We have a community events that are not religious based. It's an outreach to the community. Everybody's involved. It could be a celebration of Black History Month. It could be a celebration of Women's Month. We just finished doing a celebration of Asian American Island Pacificer, and I don't know all the other parts of it, but we celebrate diversity all the time at my church. And so that's one way that people do get involved, is we have community things that people come and participate in. To your question about, or to Chris's comment about listening, I know with me, when I talk to people that are elected officials or people that are running for office, I do want them to hear me. I do want them to listen to my concerns. And even if you're not really interested in what people are saying, at least give them the impression that you are. I've met a lot of politicians, so there's no right way or wrong way. I think if you follow your heart and you believe in what you're doing, that people will be able to see that. But I will say that I am more supportive of people that do voice their concerns for equity, and whether that's in housing, education, or just everything being accessible to every member of the community. And those things are important to me.
Yes.
And I want to say too, Chris and Rebecca, thank you so much for all the information you gave. I'm not going to be running for any office, but geez, if I was, I could use all of the information you guys have given today. Thank you for that. And I'm happy to be a part of this panel. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah, all of you have great information, great insight.
Yeah, there was one question in the chat from Suzanne. What resources are there to help with language barriers?
Does anybody have any resources? I know there's for sign language interpretation and captioning, there's an organization through one of the Centers for Independent Living in the East Bay that has that information. You can also contact the Center for Independent Living in Berkeley, and they can also refer you. But there is a Center for Independent Living in every large city. So there's one in San Mateo and one in San Jose, and you can contact them and they can give you some information for captioning and sign language interpretation that they work with. And also with language, there are several different organizations that do professional translation. We use Hannah Interpreting at our school district, HANNA, and they do Spanish language for us as well as sign language, ASL, American ASL.
And if, you know, you don't have the resources to hire a professional interpreter or translator, here are some in the chat, some, you know, go-tos that I use, MDBG and Pleco for Mandarin, Spanish Dict, and DeepL will translate in wordreference.com for Spanish.
Thank you for sharing those. Those are really helpful.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be able to reach out to friends and you know, in this really diverse community to help with stuff and try to perfect it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's excellent.
Try
It'll
not to
save you
fumble
money
too much.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if you have friends that can do that for you for free and you're campaigning, I mean, that's an excellent in-kind donation they can do. So that would be great.
You have to report it as an in-kind. That's true.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I see in chat Nelson offering to help with translating literature into Chinese. And so
thank
maybe
you.
Karen Mackey and I between our counties can come up with a way to collect some of these resources and make them
Yeah.
available to candidates.
Thank you, Nelson.
Thank you, Nelson. Yeah. This is great. We can even, Bill, will we be able to save some of the chat and then send out some other resources that are there?
Yes, we will. And we haven't yet decided exactly what vehicle we'll use to do that, but we have all the chats from all the sessions. We have a recording of the sessions. And at the end of the series, we're going to find a way to package that up and make it available to the attendees.
Great. Well, does anyone have any other questions, or does our panel have any other, words of advice? We have about 3 minutes. We could either, take some more questions or adjourn. So does anybody have anything else they want to ask or share?
I thank all the candidates, all the folks who are considering running. It's not
Yeah.
easy. Thank you for your courage and for putting yourself out there. Please feel free to reach out, Bill, and I know our Mateo County Dem Party are tremendous resources and have really been helpful to me. Yeah, and all of us down here in Santa Clara County.
For sure, yes. Can you all also put your contact information again in the chat just in case it wasn't caught before? Go ahead. Sorry, Chris, I know you were going to say something.
No. Just two quick things on the note of like who to kind of engage with and even with folks you disagree with. So focus on folks who are already in your corner, right? Who are already on your side, and then moderates as you're reaching out to voters. But for those who do disagree with, remember that there are no permanent enemies in politics. Okay, so you never know, and I think who it was. I think it was Alexis. He mentioned you never know whom you might find an ally in for a particular issue. So just keep the door open with everybody.
Yeah. I got invited to a libertarian podcast, like a local libertarian podcast, and they invited me back like a second time. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's great.
Strange bedfellows for sure. Yeah.
That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, that's great advice. It's hard. It's hard when you don't agree, right? Like right now, we've got some pretty extreme views coming out of nowhere sometimes. And it's difficult. Like when they come after my school district and are like, we need to change this book and blah, 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 blah. It's like, wow, I invite the conversation. It's not comfortable though, but you have to have that dialogue. If you can. Okay, well, thank you all so much for your participation. I appreciate you all so much. I hope that this session was very informative and helpful for all of the people running. Good luck, and we'll see you at the next session. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.